happen now. Okay. Hey, hopefully everyone saw You Are Live. We are live. First of all, welcome to everybody for joining us today. We are so excited to host Ed Aymar for the launch of his new thriller, They're Gone, under the pen name E.A. Barnes. And I hope you'll talk a little bit about that today. I have to say, and I told this to Ed the other day, it kept me up until 1 o'clock the past 2 nights, so I could not put it down. Ed is joined by the wonderful Jenny Milchman and Hank Phillippi Ryan for a panel discussion on writing a book during a pandemic. There is another word that was in the title and description of that event, but this is a family show, so I left that word out. Ed's new book, They're Gone, is set here in the D.C. and Baltimore area. 2 men from vastly different backgrounds are murdered one after another on the same night in the same fashion, and the investigation uncovers a terrifying connection. The murder sends the men's wives on a desperate search for answers and a desperate attempt to save their families' lives. I love this sentence from the review from Publishers Weekly that said, "This women fight back thriller will please those looking to vicariously smack down a few hulking villains." So that is probably one of the best lines I've seen in a review ever. There are so many wonderful things to say about Ed. He is truly one of the most generous authors and people I've had the pleasure to know. In addition to his tremendous support for his fellow authors, he is a huge supporter of local bookstores and has turned his Noir in the Bar series into a monthly fundraiser for local indies during this pandemic, which is just amazing. In addition to being an author, a cheerleader for indies, and having, I suspect, a real job, Ed also has a monthly column, Decisions and Revisions, in the Washington Independent Review of Books, and is the managing editor of The Thrill Begins, International Thriller Writers of America online resource for aspiring and debut thriller writers. He also serves on the board of ITW as Vice President of Author Programs. In addition to ITW, he is a member of the Mystery Writers of America, Crime Writers of Color, and Sisters in Crime. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you.
Jenny Milchman is an award-winning, critically acclaimed novelist from the Hudson River Valley of New York State. Her debut novel, Cover of Snow, won the Mary Higgins Clark Award, and her books Ruin Falls, As Night Falls, and Wicked River were all Indie Next picks. Her most recent book, The Second Mother, came out this past August. I have read and loved every one of Jenny's books. She is also a big supporter of indie bookstores like Ed. In fact, I seem to recall that she spent the first year a year touring indies for her first book, The Cover of Snow, and we were proud to be on that list of indies that you visited. She is also the VP of Author Programming for International Thriller Writers, a member of Sisters in Crime Speakers Bureau, and the founder and organizer of Take Your Child to a Bookstore Day. Welcome, Jenny.
Yay.
USA Today bestselling author Hank Phillippi Ryan has won 5 Agatha Awards, in addition to the Anthony McCavity, Daphne, no matter how many times I practice that, I say that wrong, Daphne du Maurier, and the Mary Higgins Clark Awards. Her most recent book, The First to Lie, came out in August 2020 and received a starred review from Publishers Weekly. Thank you for showing that. Who called it stellar and said that Ryan could win a 6th Agatha with her with her most recent book, The First to Lie. As an on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV, Hanks won 36 Emmys and many more journalism honors. She is also a past president of the National Sisters in Crime and founder of Mystery Writers of America University. So welcome, Hank.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump off the screen and leave these 3 wonderful authors with you. If you have questions or comments for Ed, Jenny, or Hank during the conversation, you can put them right there in the comment section and they'll pop up on all of our screens. So let me leave, and I'm going to Hank, Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you to get things started.
Thank you so much, Eileen. And I want to let everybody know before we start that we'd love to see what questions and comments you have, but I don't believe we can comment back on the system. So if you do have a question or comment, leave it there and we will, or go ahead and put it in, and we will definitely get to it during the discussion. And I want to thank Hank and Jenny so much for joining me. This is, I'm doing these events, as Eileen said, in support of my new book, but I didn't want to do events where I was just talking about the book. I love talking about myself, and I'm happy to. But I wanted to do, because we all have Zoom fatigue. We've all done and watched a lot of these. I just wanted to do events with some of my favorite people, and Hank and Jenny are two writers that I admired before I was published, and when I got published, I befriended both. And I've done events with Jenny. I've never had the opportunity to do one with Hank before, so this is a real treat for me. And thank you both for joining me. And one more page.
Except when I read your book on First Chapter Fun, Ed, that was really great. Read the first chapter of your book on First Chapter Fun, and that was quite an event.
I do. Can you explain for people who may not be familiar with? We're going to get to it in a little bit, but can you explain what First Chapter Fun is? Because it's amazing. I couldn't believe the amount of stuff that you and Hannah did. I was blown away. I kept emailing Michelle, my agent, and saying, "Can you look at this? Look at the video. Look at the graphic. Look at." It was just first class. I was as someone who's a coach traveler, I was very impressed.
That's so great. Well, it's really apropos of what we're talking about today, about how to launch a book during the pandemic, how to write during the pandemic, all the things about our lives that have changed, right, because of the pandemic. And Hannah Mary McKinnon, on like the first week of the pandemic, decided to do a thing where she would read out loud the first chapter of a new book. And she did it for like 50 times every day for 50 days. And at some point she was going to stop doing it because, of course, it was impossible and ridiculous. So I said, I love this, Hannah. Let's do it together. So now we do it together on Facebook and Instagram every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30 Eastern time. We just read the first chapter of a new book out loud. And I see some of the people in the crowd here who are attending. Hello to you all. Come to First Chapter Fun. So we can't wait to read Jenny's book. And we had so much fun with Ed's book, and our TBR piles are growing. But again, just as you were talking about initially, Ed, this is as a result of the pandemic. This wouldn't have happened. This is people trying to regain their equilibrium. Our book, our writing equilibrium, our promotional equilibrium, our reading equilibrium, our collection equilibrium during this horrible, ridiculous, insane pandemic.
So if you want to, somebody had asked as you were explaining it, what's First Chapter Fun? And I want to also mention where they can see it. You can can anybody join the Facebook group?
The more the merrier. Just go to First Chapter Fun Groups. It's a group on Facebook, and ask to join, and I will click you right in instantly, or Hannah will. It's one of those things that we encourage people to join. On Instagram, you can just come to First Chapter Fun and show up. But on Facebook, you join the group. So, it's kind of, I don't want to say private, but it's all because we want everybody to be there. But it's a wonderful community where we have all gotten to know each other. As the group grows, we're up to maybe 2,000 people now. Mm-hmm. As the group grows, more friends are being made. I see Susan and Sherry and people, they're there on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12:30 p.m. And people talk about how it's this little moment of normalcy, this little half hour of someone reading you a story and introducing you to a book.
Hank read my book as we discussed on Thursday, and I tuned in and watched it. And I think I may have crashed Instagram because I had it on like 7 different devices. I was like watching it everywhere because I was so impressed. This was so cool. And especially, as I mentioned, for me, somebody who's admired Hank for so long, this was really neat to have her reading my first chapters. So I would recommend it to everybody. And Hannah, who, like you, has just a beautiful reading style and voice. She reads on Tuesday, right? And you read Thursdays?
Well, somehow it's sort of worked out that way, but not always. We don't want to have it be that it's always Hannah on Tuesday and always me on Thursday. We want it to be a surprise. We want the books to be surprises. I see Meg in the comment is asking, where can we find First Chapter Fun? At First Chapter Fun on Instagram and First Chapter Fun groups on Facebook. As Ed, as you were saying, we can't go into the comments. So we can't wait to read Jenny's book. We're going to find a date for that and make that happen very soon.
I have to tell you, hey, you are on all the books, but Hannah, way back, I think you didn't know this because I had an earlier pub date, and then they switched my pub date. But before they switched my pub date, Hannah did read the first chapter. And I agree completely with that. I mean, it makes you feel like you're a star, the way you guys read, and the readers are so into it, as I would be too, because it is like getting a story read too. So, yeah.
Well, what was it like to have, I mean, Hannah has this gorgeous British accent. What was it like to hear your book through Hannah's voice?
I just, for me, it's like Great British Bake Off. I can just listen to them talk all day. So, it was kind of like my books and then memories of cakes being made.
That's great. All good.
The odd thing with Hannah is that accent is completely fake. She's actually from Alabama.
Right.
And it's just a sort of kind of pretentious.
She told you not to tell that. I mean, didn't she ask you? She's great. She grew up in Switzerland, actually, and moved to Canada 10 years ago. And she still has that gorgeous accent, which I agree, Jenny, everything sounds great with it.
Yeah.
We tried to hear the books written by authors in the UK, so it sounds authentic.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So one of the things, I'm glad we actually jumped right into that, because that's one of the things about that's so nice to have Hank and Jenny on. And I know that I'm being a bit effusive here, and I'm fine with that, because Hank and Jenny, one of the things I admire is how much they do for the writing community. And it's so nice to have you guys sort of on screen rather than pushing others. It's nice to have you guys talking about yourselves and your work rather than other people. It's lovely to do that. But I wanted to talk to Jenny, and Jenny and I both need to update our bios because I served on ITW's board and for a few years. And I actually took Jenny's spot on the board, and Jenny was kind of my mentor. What's that?
There was a coup.
Yes. Yeah, we got you out. But Jenny was my mentor, and now my time on the board is up, but now you are working with ITW for the debuts. And I wanted to talk to you both about the work you've been doing during this year, the pandemic, and during all this uncertainty. Hank, you touched on it a little bit, but would this have happened, do you think, these kind of efforts regardless of the year, or did 2020 make that more urgent?
Well, Ed, you talk first. You should talk about Noir at the Bar. I mean, you work so hard on that with such an array of wonderful authors. And it's not just reading, but it's a whole wonderful program. I mean, would that have happened online if not for the pandemic?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. I like the spotlight and attention and praise. I would say that we had a pretty good run in DC at a bar for in-person events. Mm-hmm. And, we really should have been doing it virtually as well. I don't know why we weren't. Now that I think about it, I'm like, there's so many people who are tuning in. There's somebody I've been talking to who lives in California, and she's like, I'm in a really remote part, and I don't know even how I came across the North Bar series, but I get to watch it, once a month now, and it's so much fun. And I'm like, we could have been broadcasting these events the whole time. I think if we ever get back to in-person events, I think that'll definitely be a component of it. And I hope that that's a component for, conferences, for Thriller Fest and BoucherCon, and the Edgars, where people can maybe pay, a registration fee and watch the event live if you can't attend in person, because so many of us can't, for either family.
I hear this from everyone, that people can go to events that they never could have gone to. I've heard from so many people who say, you've come to a city that's 2 hours from me. I never could have gone that. I never could have gone to that. I never could have met you. And I do think, Ed, as you're saying exactly, that it has forced us to broaden our boundaries and try something new. And look at all the people who are here. It's one of those things where people have had to adapt, and who'd have thought we'd have to come up with lighting and backgrounds and all those kinds of things. But people know about Zoom and know about StreamYard and know how to do it. And we're now, after all this time, kind of at ease with it. And I think that it won't go away. It can't go away because of the wonderful access that it's given. I mean, VoucherCon was great. People have learned how to be so nimble with conferences and feeling inclusive, letting people talk, and really being interactive and letting people participate. Ask me about the back room later, but I do think we have opened new doors. I mean, this is like, look for the stars in the dark sky. We have found new ways of doing things. I mean, I wonder do you think, Jenny, that this has been life-changing for all of us and sort of promotion changing for all of us?
Well, it's funny because I was like the queen of face-to-face, right?
Yeah.
Like I gave a talk called Face-to-Face in a Virtual World. So this has definitely been, before my book came out in August, we had my in-person tour planned. Like I was on the phone with my publicist. So yeah, I think it's been life-changing. But it's funny, when you guys were talking, you made me think of that silver lining for the first time, that there is an inclusivity and an access. And like, as much as the pandemic has been an unequalizer in many ways, maybe that access, to stimulation and events and community, people who live 40 miles from a bookstore can now be at one more page.
Exactly.
For Jenny, for you, have there been changes here? I mean, you're right. You did so much in person. I mean, you had the longest book tour, right? Or the longest,
longest
I
book
forget,
tour.
right? Was that what it was called? And
the world's longest.
Yeah, packed up your family in a car and ended. I think it seems like both emotionally and professionally, it did wonders for you.
Emotionally, I loved it. I really did. We had so much fun. And, what Ed and Hank are talking about, and I saw Hank. One of the most fun events on that first tour was with Hank and Bill Landay in Cambridge. I don't know if you remember Hank, because you do so many events, but it was
we all had dinner together with your family afterward. It was great.
Yeah, it was a real bucket list for me. And, so emotionally losing that has been really hard. But, we have to adapt, and I have gotten to see people that I wouldn't have who can come, to an event in Georgia. Susan is on the comments. I met Susan in person, and now I've seen Susan virtually with this book. I don't remember, there was a specific question. You guys got me reminiscing.
Well, are there things about this that one of the things that I'm curious about is there, that you mentioned that this was hard to lose that, but are there parts of this that part of the change in the approach that you enjoy?
Honestly, if it were, this is just very honest, me and the 1,000 or so people Eileen said we're going to be listening someday. If you offered me either one, in addition to the fact that the pandemic sucks in real ways for quite a lot of people, I would certainly choose, the face-to-face in the regular life. And because I would drive down, I would come pick up Ed in DC, and we could both drive to Cambridge to see Hank. Like, that wouldn't bother me at all. But I have a lot of flexibility, which is privileged, and I'm crazy. So I'm not the right person to ask. What I hear from readers is that they're enjoying a lot of this access and events. So I think that's great.
You think about, book tour. I feel that at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, my book came out in August as well. Was it the same day, Jenny's? Was ours the same?
I think you might have been the week before.
Maybe so. But, we're ready for, I would have thought I had my suitcase packed and my boarding passes and this big itinerary where I'm in a different city every day and up at the crack of dawn to get to the airport and hope that my plane wasn't delayed and hope that the person didn't put his suitcase over my seat. And so I didn't have a place to put right in the overhead. All of those kinds of, eating hotel food and trying to find an Uber and meeting new people and getting to sign books in person. That's the thing, Ed, if you're talking about what we miss, is that I love that moment of talking to people in real life and then watching them respond. I mean, the fuel of the reaction is what you often don't get in situations like this. You say something that you hope is funny and then somebody laughs and you think, oh, yay. Or people nod, in agreement with what you're saying. And then afterward, they come up to you with a book and say, will you sign this to me? And it's just the idea that they change their lives to put on a coat and get in a car and drive to a place and park and walk through the rain and come to a bookstore just to see us is pretty amazing. And then they get, and I've been on the receiving end millions of times, I get to have a wonderful author hand me a book that says to Hank, thank you for coming or whatever. And it's a memento that is a treasure. So that is the other thing that we don't get, and that I wish you for your next book, Ed, is the moment of having people stand in line to have you sign your book for them. That's quite a special thing.
It's so strange because when I first, got published, I assumed that my day job is in marketing and I do a lot of online marketing. I assumed that would be the strength and what I would enjoy and what I'd find success in. It's actually the in-person events.
Yeah.
It's talking to people, it's meeting them, and it's not, I don't think none of us are introverts, but it's still, it doesn't, there's a difference between being social and also talking to a group of people and talking at an event. I actually love it. And I didn't see that coming. So it is something I miss. It is something like to do an event at a bookstore and see friends, and then have those moments where you see people in the audience you don't recognize that aren't related.
That's amazing. Like, not your family and not your family. What are they doing here? The other good silver lining, though, and because it's just us, we can talk about it, is that we've all had events where not many people come. I was talking to even Lee Child about it, and when he first started, he had events where there were 3 people, and you drive up to the parking lot of the store or library, and you think there are no cars. There are no cars in this parking lot, and this is going to be miserable. And then so every person that comes in, you're like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So in events like this, you don't see empty chairs. You can just imagine all the thousands of people. And then there are the replays. So I know Diva R was asking in the comments, once her request to join First Chapter Fund is approved, would I be able to see you read the first chapter of Ed's book, They're Gone? And yes, you can. They're all archived. So those all in the videos are all there on Instagram and Facebook. And so that's the other positive thing about these events, is if you don't show up right now, you could be watching this anytime and seeing the 3 of us anytime and have, it's just like television. You can watch it whenever you want to watch it. You don't have to be there at 10 on Thursday to watch ER. ER is always on, just like we're always on.
I remember when it wasn't always on, though. But along the lines of what you're saying, Hank, Louise Penny says that the only thing worse than an event where nobody comes is when one person comes.
Oh, yes. Who said that?
Louise Penny.
Louise Penny.
At an event where like 250 people were there.
I don't think she's ever had to know it. But Michael Connolly, I thought you were saying Michael Connolly, because Michael Connolly told me the story about how he went to an event, and he's, you're waiting in the wings in the background to see if anybody shows up. And one guy from Michael Connolly, one guy. So Connolly told me he came out and sat down next to the guy and looked at his watch and said, I don't think he's coming. Do you think he's coming? And the guy said, you don't think he is? And Connolly says, no, I don't. I'm going to go. And he left, and the guy left. Is that not fabulous? Is that not a great story? No, I don't.
That's terrific.
True. Before his picture was like really big on the books.
Yeah. Well, the guy, that was a risk. That was a total risk. But I love that story.
It's a good story, but I will just throw out a companion that one of my first events on the world's longest book tour was in Goshen, Indiana. One person came and we shut the bookstore down. We talked for like 2 hours. And at the end of the event, he didn't buy a book, which always really hurts me for the bookstore's sake. But then he told me why he was, because it's not going to make my bottom line. I treasure every reader, but it's not, And then he said he wasn't buying it that night because he already had 3 copies. And one he read, one he loans out, and one he keeps pristine. And that sounds a little kooky. But then he was like, I have to go now because I have a 3-hour drive home. And, I know. And it took me 11 years to get published. And I was thinking, like, if you suffer that much rejection and discouragement, and then there's even one person who thinks it's worth driving 6 hours to see you, and that makes it all worthwhile. Even the one person event. But I agree that living forever and people being able to see it later is a great silver lining.
What about, so when the pandemic affected everybody, which seems like for most of us, it was the middle of March 13th, I think, when everything shut down. Jenny, you mentioned that your book got pushed back for publication to August. How did that affect your writing? A lot of writers I know, were sort of tapped out. They were stressed and sidetracked and just couldn't focus. Were you guys affected, or?
Jenny, go ahead.
For me, the writing is I'm going to knock a lot of wood and thank the stars, but the writing is very constant. As writers, we live a very solitary life when we're writing. And it's funny, like Hank's description of the overnight bag and the Uber and the this and the that, or the limo or the yacht once you reach out with Michael Connolly. To contrast that with going into a cave or a closet or wherever you do your writing, that hasn't been that affected by the stress of the pandemic for me. And if anything, I think it's gotten a little more, it's made me dive deeper. The book that I'm working on now, I feel like it's a deeper exploration than I've ever allowed myself to go. So it's something about the intensity of the period or something. But I do hear that, stress affects people in different ways. And maybe my way of coping is writing. The way it's really affected me is I just eat a lot more donuts.
Donuts. It's funny because I remember on March the 12th, I was in Palm Beach at a big event in Palm Beach, 250 people. And I remember the day of that event really sort of shrinking back into the hall. There was a big, this is going to sound so weird, but there was a big buffet and everybody was at this buffet. And I'm like, I don't think so. I sort of pretended that I was being nervous about my speech. And I this is so silly, but I remember I walked up to the podium, all these people, I walked up to the podium and the organizer handed me the microphone. And I thought, ooh, okay. But, we weren't that scared yet. It was just this little, just a little specter. And then I went to the airport. And some people in the air, and there wasn't COVID in Palm Beach yet. There was not one case, and this is what I was really sort of hanging my hat on, because I kept hoping they would cancel, and they just wouldn't cancel. And then I couldn't say I'm not coming because so anyway, I was lucky, knock on wood. So I was at the airport, the Palm Beach airport, getting ready to get on the plane to come home to Boston. And I saw a woman, there were some people in masks, and I saw a woman in a mask, and she pulled her mask off her face, then she sneezed, then she put her mask back on. And I thought, get me out of here, get me out of here. And
people are still doing that. I feel like we haven't gotten the education that, but this is a whole other topic. But
yeah, but anyway, let me tell this really fast. So I got on the plane. So I called my television station from the airport. I called my boss and I said, I am staying home. I am staying home. And I said, I've been with you through 9/11 and through anthrax and through hurricanes and through tornadoes and blizzards. But I'm staying home. And she said, fine. She said, fine. But as for writing, Ed, I have to tell you, for the first month, I was in the midst of my new book and I was doing well. I was finally thinking, I got this. The story is, I'm doing this. I can finally write. I know how to do this finally. After this is my 13th book, I can do it. And I just crashed. It was horrible. I sat here at this computer and thought, why am I doing this? I don't know how to do this. This is ridiculous. I better go buy some more aluminum foil. I need tuna. What if we run out of light? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. I couldn't do it. And I have to say it took a month. And you can see on my writing schedule how there's all the little blanks where my words of the day are not filled in. I finally thought, wait, and I wonder what you guys think about this. I thought, I chose to be a storyteller. I chose to be a writer. I chose to do this with agency and with joy. So it's more important now than ever to do it. It's more important now to be a writer and tell stories and share them, even more than it was before. And that's what sort of got me back on the track.
That's lovely. I want to get Jenny. I want to go to you in 1 second. I just need to ask one question to Hank before I forget it. Tornadoes and lizards?
Blizzards.
Blizzards. Oh,
there was the attack of the giant lizard that time in Boston. Not many people heard about it because it just he sort of came and went. But
I always thought it was an urban myth.
I would have covered it had the giant lizards come, but no blizzards.
That makes more sense.
So,
okay.
so did TV reporting shut down, or was it just your?
No, I'm still on the air. I do it from here. I do interviews from here. I do stand-ups from here. I do research from here. I work at Channel 7 part-time now, so that's made it a little bit better. But no, there are still reporters who are out in the field. But I'm 70 years old. I'm not doing that. I'm not going. It's just I'm not going out to do that now. Although my producer is 40 and she's too. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jenny. What'd you say?
I said, so even though you look 50, you're not going to go out in the field.
Thank you. No. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge. As it has for all of us, though, right? Everything that we do has so changed.
Yeah.
Jenny, you were going to say something earlier?
I was just going to tell Hank she looks super young.
I know.
No, it wasn't. I do think that's a lovely perspective to take, that stories are more important than ever. But Ed, do you think that I actually want to hear more about They're Gone and the pen name, and this is sort of like a breakout kind of thing. Did you when it was March, whatever date it was, did you feel like, oh my gosh, I finally do this, and then they send a pandemic?
I wasn't that affected in regards to this book. I was in the midst of editing final edits, and it actually sort of, I don't want to say it helped in any way, but the last chapter of the book takes place 10 years later. The book takes place in 2019, so it felt irresponsible, and this was something I kind of struggled with a little bit, not to mention the pandemic. I didn't want to burden people with it because I didn't know if I wanted to write that or if people would want to read it. But I did think it deserved at least a kind of an allusion to it. So I was able to include those. I didn't mind. I felt for writers who were releasing books, like my friend Jennifer Hillier. She put a book. Her book came out in, I think, May, maybe April or May, and that for her and for debuts, they were around that time period. I mean, they were just beside themselves, and I understand that. It's for me. I wasn't as affected, and my writing wasn't as affected because like I said, I was in the midst of. I wasn't working on something completely new. I know a lot of.
No, but your book came out November the 10th.
Yeah.
Is that right? And by that time, there was sort of a system where people understood how book launches would be. And you, as a marketing guy, could at least be nimble enough to organize your life to get the book to come out. But your launch, I mean, a book launch, what was that like for you?
This was the best book launch I've had. And I'm not sure why that is. I really can't, figure out what about it. And I don't know how the sales were. I mean, it may just be a lot of nice encouragement and pats on the back and attaboys. And I sold 2 copies. I have no idea. But I will say that for the launch, it's been a lot of fun. It's been fun to do. I tried to do events that would make me happy and would make people happy. So I tried to work with, this event with you two. I did an event with, I mentioned Jennifer Hillier, who's a great friend of mine. We had an event together. Tara Laskowski, another writer, people I genuinely, care about and love. I just wanted to see them, and I assumed that the event would go good for the crowd because there's a lot of warmth there. Yeah. So for me, it's been. It's funny, that warmth, because one of the things when you mentioned the Noir at the Bar earlier, Hank, and Alex Segura in New York first did these virtual Noir at the Bars, maybe 2 weeks after March 13th. It was really soon, and the need for the event, the warmth there, there were a couple hundred people at that first virtual Noir at the Bar, which, as you guys know, for any writing event is tremendous. And I felt like everyone in the comments talking, everybody, seeing faces again and really needing that sense of connection. That was really nice. If anything, it's kind of like 9/12/2001, as awful as 9/11 was, there is that 9/12 day where people felt a sense of love and urgency in that love. And that's kind of what that's sort of gone now, with the pandemic, and that would happen. But it was necessary for me anyways in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I remember that the day after 9/11, that, people just were sort of looking at the sky and being happy to be alive. And as a reporter, it was very difficult. I don't think we went home for the first 2 weeks, because we were just working and working and working. And, every time I started thinking, this is too hard, I thought, well, I'm alive. So why don't you just keep doing this? And I think that there's a sense of that too, with there's so much sorrow around us. It's always safe inside a book, right? It's always safe inside a book. It's always safe inside a story, and it's always safe inside our manuscripts. And that's one of the things that we all have. We all have, readers and writers all have, that makes us so lucky, is that we already enjoy that. We're already fans of that. We're already used to that. And we know that in a book, you can solve someone else's problems. You can be someone else for a while. And in They're Gone, Ed, there are certainly problems. I mean, if people are here and don't know about They're Gone, just as Jenny was saying, we're trying to get you to talk about it.
You're right. So I'm really happy with this book. As you guys know, somebody asked me at an event last week how I feel about my writing now, and there's a really nice sense that you get when you're writing, when you see it genuinely, honestly, authentically improving. Um, and I think there's nobody I've been really fortunate that I've had good trade reviews for They're Gone. And I appreciate that. But even if the reviews have been negative, I mean, there's nobody harder on my writing than me.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's probably the same for the two of you. So I sort of get a sense of when my BS detector tends to kick in. And when something's ready to be published, I feel like I kind of know it at that point. And it's exciting. And that's how I feel about this book. It's nice. It's nice to when I have to read parts of it, for an event or something, to read it and not hate it.
When you were writing it, were you aware that, like, oh, this is a step up, this is a little bigger than what I've done? Because that's how I think of it. Like, it seems a little just bigger, maybe, in scope or writing or prose or something like that. Did you have that sense?
Well, the Unrepentant, the book that came out last year, was it was nicely received, which was wonderful. But the common refrain from critics and from readers was that it was very violent, and it was a book about sex trafficking, and it was a very honest book. In the research I did was distressing, and I wanted to I didn't want to shy away from that. But I also didn't want to be the guy who writes really violent books and is good at it. I wanted to write something that was commercial and something that I felt a book club would enjoy, but was very much my book, that didn't shy away from anything I wanted to say. So They're Gone was, I don't know. It's hard to say like what you want to do for a book, what your motivation is, because there's so many motivations, and that 2 years or 3 years later, it's really hard to remember what they were. But I do know that from day one with this book, I wanted to write something that had a broader appeal.
Well, I mean, you balanced Kessie's point of view and Deb's point of view in the book. So you're writing from the point of view of two very different women. What was that like to do?
Well, there's no one who knows women better than me. Somewhere my wife is like, what is he saying?
I want you to she's on the phone.
No, it was, in a way for me, writing a novel is very daunting. It's so big. There's so many words, and to use two perspectives helps with that. And then I don't consider myself like, there's things I think I do very well in writing and things that aren't my strengths. And I feel like plotting is something that I work harder at because it just doesn't seem to come naturally. But writing with two different characters and then intertwining their stories, automatically complicates the plot. So that's sort of a good cheat for me to do that.
That's not a cheat. That's a juggle. It's more difficult than not.
Hank says that.
I'm sorry?
In a lot of your books, Hank, you do that.
Yeah.
Intertwining the stories and all that, and have the main characters and everything. Yeah, I don't think it's a cheat. I think it's a way of layering and making more nuance come to the story.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had worries. My big concern was writing female characters because I didn't want to get it wrong, and I didn't want to embarrass myself by describing their breasts as like different types of fruit or anything. I wanted like something that was, wow, Hank, that was an amazing eye roll with your.
Because women will never do that. I mean, we just don't do that. So that's why I rolled my eyes. So obviously, because it's such an out there thing to even think about, right? You would never do that because a woman would never do that.
Well, I didn't, and I definitely didn't want to. My real concern wasn't something that clumsy. It was more that I didn't want to, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to say this. I didn't want to masculinize. Yeah. That's not the right term, but the woman.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to do things to react in ways that I would I would react. And because, I'm writing thrillers, there's going to be action, and I want them to respond in a way that seems honest and authentic. The best, my agent and my editor are all, are both women. And the best editing note I can get, I feel, is that a little like offhand, like, I don't think I would do this. And I glue myself to that notion. Like, if this isn't real, if this isn't honest, then I need to know. I want to know.
Yeah.
Better to find out from you then.
It works the other way too, because I have a pal who had to change a lot of her book that was written from the viewpoint of a man, because her editor told her, your guy is saying he's sorry all the time.
Yeah.
Apologizing all the time. And that's not a masculine thing to do, which I had never thought about.
Is he Canadian?
No, I know. Canadians would say that. And makes another sweeping generalization.
Sherry wants to know, did you go back and forth writing the characters or stay in one head and then the other? Actually, Sherry wants to talk about that for everybody.
Why don't you guys take this one first?
Go ahead, Jenny.
I write in a very linear way. So my last book, The Second Mother, that came out this summer, only has one point of view. That's the first time I've ever done that. But all the books where I have multiple point of views, I just write straight through beginning to end, because I really feel as if the story is happening that way. And I guess the best example I can give is that in my first book, Cover of Snow, there was a fire. And I'd always really wanted to write a fire scene. I was really happy with that scene. Ed, you said, I assume you, like every other writer, are the hardest critic of you. No, I am not. I am the easiest critic, and everybody else is harder on me. But anyway, so I wrote the fire scene. I was really happy. I thought it was like, I mean, I loved it. It was perfect. And then I gave it to my husband, who's one of my first readers, and he was like, wait, so I just don't understand. Why is there a fire here? And I was like, I don't know why there's a fire. It's not like And he was like, no, you do make this stuff up. So anyway, my point is that I have to write from page 1 to page 400 because it feels like those are the events happening.
Yeah, because things happen because of something else. So, I don't have any idea what's going to happen next in my book. So I'll write what happens to one person, and then another person, it's happening at the same time, and that's putting the action forward. And then somebody else does something as a result of that, and then maybe there could be a fire because there needs to be a fire as the result of something that happened. So it's because of this that this happens, and because of this that this happens. So to me, the action couldn't go forward unless I know what everybody's doing. Now, I do have to say that in writing the book that I'm writing right now, I had this thing that was very different from all of the other 12 books that I've written, which was I got sort of 3/4 of the way through, and the story's going along nicely. And I had that Jenny husband question, which is, why would they do that? And then I figured, okay, I need to put that in. So for the very first time in my life, I went back and wrote the middle after I wrote, closer to the end, and expanded the middle of the book crazy to sort of lay the groundwork to let the reader know, here's why this turned out to happen. And it's one of those things that I think my author brain knew why, but the reader would not have known why. And that was kind of life-changing to me. I sort of sat here at this very desk where I am right now and thought, can I do that? Are you allowed to do that? And then I thought, yes, I'm allowed to do that. And knock on wood, it kind of worked. So, it's an interesting author discussion about how even though there's a way that works for you, that there might be a new way that unfolds for you at a different point in your writing life.
Yeah, I tend to write just like you guys. I write straight through. I will say that there are times, though, where I'll take a character's chapters and read them directly after each other, just for consistencies in voice. And occasionally there's stuff that, smaller details that I want to make sure I don't forget throughout. Like if somebody has a cat in one chapter, it can't become a dog in another. So, stuff like that I'll make sure are consistent. But to tell the story, I have to go straight through. What one thing I wanted to ask is, I know that we have a couple of people on here have indicated that they're sort of aspiring to be published writers. What advice would you give a aspiring writer?
We'll do stuff like this for sure, because, I guess I'll speak for Ed and Hank, because I know them pretty well, and definitely myself. Like, we're your future community, and, those ties are going to be what supports you as you, go along your journey. So connect with writers, definitely. Join things like Sisters in Crime and ITW and MWA, and come to events, whether Zoom or in person. But that, I mean, kind of goes without saying. The biggest thing I would say is, and I know this gets said a lot, but I'll explain why I walk the walk, is don't give up. It did take me 11 years to get published, and the first book that got published had been rejected by every house in New York City. I had an agent, but she had not gotten any offers on the book. And then I met an author who Hank knows for sure, and I'm not sure if Ed does, a big Sisters in Crime member, and she agreed to read my unpublished manuscript and liked it, and she gave it to her editor at her publishing house, who made an offer on that book. The same publisher had turned the book down 6 months before. So, you never know. I because I am the easiest critic of my work, I have to be really careful not to be like pearls before swine. I don't know why all this worked out. I have to be very careful not to do that. But sometimes it really is that you've written something that just isn't landing for whatever reason. You don't have the right, conglomeration of people in the right place at the right time. And you just have to keep going and believe in yourself, before the rest of the world is inviting you to do stuff like this, and lovely people like Ed are saying, hey, sign on with me and come help celebrate my book release. Before you get to that point, you really have to be your first champion.
I remember that, Jenny. I remember that story perfectly. And it's a wonderful story. And it's perfect. It's a perfect example of how you never know what's going to happen next. And you just keep going, and you just put yourself out there, and you allow the universe to show you a way that might not be the way that you planned was the way, but it's the way that you didn't know was the way and now you're ready to receive it. When I started writing my first book, one of the things that I had going for me when I started writing my first book was I was so naive that I didn't know how hard it was. So I'm sitting here like, I'm a natural. This is so easy. I got this. New York Times, here I come. And my first manuscript was 723 pages long, right? And it was 400 pages. And then when I finally got an agent, and the book was out on submission, I got a rejection from someone who I was very sad about that. And a couple days later, she emailed my agent and said, I can't get Hank's book out of my head. It's not exactly right, but I can't get the book out of my head. Can she change the sort of tone and sensibility of it from being a fast-paced little chick lit funny book? She says, I think it has the bones to be a big women's fiction thriller. Can she rewrite it to be that? And I rewrote the whole book with a different sensibility and a different level of depth. And that's what became Primetime. So it was only because some little nugget of a thing stuck in this editor's head, and she decided to nurture me enough to show me the way to do it. And the other thing I think that it needs to be remembered is it's hard. It's like Ed was saying, it's a whole book. It's daunting. It's really hard. If it's not hard, you're probably not working hard enough on it. And so when you reach those days when you think, I stink, no, I'm not doing this. I don't even know what I'm doing. Just say, yes, I'm a writer. This is what writers do. If I weren't a writer, I wouldn't feel this way. And just type the next terrible sentence, because you can fix it. You can fix it.
Wait, Hank, so did that editor, I do want to get back to Ed's book and whether he agrees with us, but did that editor work with you? Like as you were, that transformation is
no. She just said it needs to be bigger. And she said, and your heroine needs to control the action, not have stuff happen to her. I didn't know, and I thought I was funny and cute, but I was writing. I didn't know exactly what I was writing, so I'm forever grateful to her for that life-changing thing.
So, Ed, what would you say? You've been through a lot of transformations already in your career.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing was, when I actually my story is similar to both of yours, because I started writing in '97. That's when I started writing seriously on a daily basis, and I didn't get published till 2013. And it took there were small. I didn't have a book published. There were agents and close calls and all that along the way, but it took a long time. And I did something that was I think I did wrong, or I know, but it may have been right for me. I wrote in a cave. Essentially, nobody knew I was writing. The people, the woman I dated knew, and that's probably it. My family didn't know, my friends, my coworkers, and I didn't go to writing organizations. I read a ton, but I didn't do anything like this. So I think my publishing path would have been shorter had I done that. And I think that my publishing knowledge would have been greater. And that is one of the big things writers need. And I know you guys would agree with that, is you have to have, Jenny, I think you're frozen, or you really like your hair. But I really, having that industry knowledge, knowing about your book, knowing what the marketing means and represents, you're not going to know everything. You're just not, but you need to, this is a business, it's an art, but it's a business, and you've got to have an understanding of what is happening with your work. And one of the best ways to do that is this.
But what you did that was so right, so on the money, right, is reading.
Yeah.
That is it's just absolutely number one. You have to, when we write the books that we write, thrillers and psychological suspense and those kinds of noir, like you do, Ed, is, you're making a contract with the reader. I'm giving you this kind of a book, and you have to know what that kind of a book is in order to write that kind of a book. You're writing your own unique story that no one else could tell, but there's an expectation of some sinister thing in the background or some bad guy in the background that's going to have a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's going to have a character who you care about and a problem that needs to be solved, and somehow, in some way, some good guy will win in some way, and some bad guy will get what's coming to them in some way. It could be somewhat ambiguous or somewhat not perfectly wrapped up, but some problem is going to be solved. All that has to be there. I know we've all looked at manuscripts of people, and I've been tempted to say to people, have you ever read a book?
Yeah.
This isn't what that is. Or I've said, what kind of a book is this supposed to be? Right. Give me that. Sort of like that, exactly like that editor did to me.
Yeah. Where do you want to sit and what niche do you fill? You guys, Greg Hickey is here, and I'm going to shout out, by the way, that Greg has a relatively new book out that, Ed, I think you would love. It's called Parabellum. And Greg wants to know, how do you transition from writing one book to the next? Do you juggle? Do you take a break after you publish a book before starting a new one, or just dive right in?
I don't take breaks. I don't like to. I really want to. I just want to keep going. I know there's writers who are like, oh, I took 2 months, off in the Bahamas, but I can't afford that. So, yeah. Hank.
So you're always writing a new book or editing the one that's about to come out, Ed?
Yeah, for me, partly it's because writing is like, for me, it's like going to the gym. Or what I imagine going to the gym is like for people who do. It's, like if I don't do it every day, I feel flabby. Yeah. I feel like it's not like I'm losing something, and then I have to catch up. And it makes me happy. I'm grumpy when I don't write.
Well, I have a contract, so I have to keep going. So just like all of you, I'm writing one book and sort of editing the previous book and promoting the book before that. And that's a joy, right? How lucky we are to be able to do that. Greg, that is congratulations. I didn't know that. And I love that you have your new book coming out, Parabellum, Jenny, you said?
Parabellum?
Yeah, the reason I mention it actually is because, Ed, you talked about the unrepentant being a difficult topic. Greg's book is also a very difficult topic, but like the unrepentant, really top notch.
Right, you can put that on your book, Greg. Vicki is saying, I recently read a book without an ending and I felt betrayed. Like, what just happened? Did the author get tired of writing? I really think that you're so right, Vicki, that my husband was reading a book the other day and I said, and he finished it and I said, how did it end? And he's like, I don't know, really. So you don't want that. You want some satisfying ending so that when the reader finishes the book, they say, wow, what a good book. What a good book that was.
What do they say? They say the first chapter sells that book and the last chapter sells the next book.
Perfect.
I know that we're right at an hour, so I wanted to, before we sign off, I wanted to say one thing that I know Hank and Jenny would absolutely agree with. And for anybody here watching this, after you log off today, please visit One More Page, their website, browse their shelves, and buy a book to support the bookstore. It can be one of ours. It absolutely should be one of ours. If you already have our book, then another one makes a great gift for somebody. If not, then just buy a book by somebody, maybe somebody that we've recommended would be terrific. But we owe so much, the three of us do, to independent bookstores as writers, and really even more so in a way as readers. And One More Page has been fantastic for all of us. So please, when you log off, visit their store online.
Here. One more page. Yay.
And next year we're coming to you in person.
Yay, we would love that. Thank you so much. This was awesome. I was just here laughing, and I wanted to put my own little questions in there, but it looks like you got some great ones. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for everyone who was watching, and this will be up on our Facebook and YouTube channel, so you can watch it again. And if you go to the event page for this, it will also be there, as well as all of these lovely author books. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite, Ed. Thank you, Eileen, for hosting, and One More Page. And hey,
congratulations to all of you with your new books out this year.
Thank you. We're very happy.
And Hank, congratulations on your Anthony, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I love the sounds back there.
Woo. Just won the Anthony for Best Book of the Year, so I'm very happy about that.
Yay.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Thank you, guys. That's very nice of you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Eileen. This was awesome.
Thanks, guys.